Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Pred's given an update on his situation, trying to get to the US ASAP from the visa perspective, saying that he ego-child his appointment like he was back on Bakaj at the US Embassy, I'm guessing in London, over the last couple of days. If that is true and his appointment is now done and it went particularly well, couldn't be too long from now until Pred's going to be in the US, and maybe he needs to be, given that other teams are getting practice in right about now. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. This I thought was a hilarious caption really after what we saw the other day with Clayster versus Scrappy, and then you know, having found himself in a great sort of Scrappy straight up falls off the map. So there have been some comedy clips going around so far in this game, it's got to be said. There's also this update because lots to talk about. Look, be careful what you think about these maps because the tac sprint delay after sliding, you're not moving as fast now as you might be when this is fixed. So this is you know, the issue that's been mentioned by some people is that there's a significant delay after sliding that occurs when you try and go into tac sprinting. They're going to reduce that as was initially intended. So probably when this is done, the players are going to move faster than they are presently, which definitely raises an interesting question as to whether the maps are going to play differently to the way they presently do. There's also this from Parasite here. He puts together a Rival 9 class. I always tend to trust Parasite's classes to be pretty good, and people are still trying to figure out what actually is the best SMG, because seems like the way that he's structured this gun, trying to make it look more like an AR, you know, like, okay, there's a close quarters stock, but you know, does this gun look like an SMG? Not necessarily. He's put the pretty long barrel on this, long muzzle on it. So ARs are dominating the game right now, there's no doubt. Maybe that won't be the case forever, but for now, you need to find an SMG class that's actually viable, because in public matches, it ain't looking so good for SMGs, and, well, that certainly means in competitive, you get stuff like this happening, where Dashy 180 spins on Mutex. I'm guessing you heard him here, right? Now, even though there is dead silence, you still can be heard if you climb up a ladder, for example. So Mutex gets heard, Dashy just 180 spins on him, some nice clips going around. This is another such example, and I'm still mind-blown this guy isn't in the league, to be honest. This entire team, right, of Beans, Bance, Nastie, and Hixie, is insane that they were all in challenges. Look at this clip though from Nastie, right? So this is what, sub-base hardpoint. They were playing against Genesis and Co yesterday, and here's Nastie with the MCW, basically the ACR, gets the third kill, and like, this entire streak is ridiculous. The next 4-piece he gets is outrageous. This guy was so good for London this year. I don't know that people say that Nastie's underrated, and I believe firmly that he is, or at least that he is very good. But I think at the end of last season, I mean, look at this final kill. Unbelievable. To be honest, at the end of last season, Nastie was getting a lot of credit, like I think credit that he absolutely deserved. And people were recognizing that, okay, actually, yeah, this guy is seriously good. And despite the fact that London weren't so good, Nastie was consistently delivering top performances. I think I actually had him just inside my top 20 on the rankings. I don't really think anyone else put him anywhere near that, to be like, I didn't see it when the overall rankings came out. I don't think Nastie was that close, but I had him about top 20. Maybe that's slightly biased, but I think it was justified, to be honest, given his performance on a particularly, well, not a great London team. And I think if you watch Nastie's point of view last season, he was not just playing for kills, like the guy was legit, but no one's picked him up. I don't really get why. And I know some people were speculating, oh, like it's the same thing as Donny Temp, like he's turned down options in the league, but I'm not so sure that he has. We'll see actually Nastie in a second replies to this and says, like, well, as Crone said, Nastie, Beans, Bunce, and Hicks you in challenges, and Nastie's like, yep, shrug, like, you know, what can we do down here type thing, kind of implying that, yeah, like he hasn't had any offers from the Pro League, which is kind of wild, especially as Dashy says, Nastie is criminally underrated. So, yeah, he definitely, having played against Nastie for a season or two, knows this guy is legit, and look, there's still time for Los Angeles Grillers to make a call and sign this entire team potentially, because, yeah, the stats these guys put up in the finals as well. To be fair, the SMG duo, you might say, okay, where's the slang coming from? But this AR duo, like Nastie, even in the finals, didn't have crazy numbers, but Beans dropped to 1.5. So, yeah, I mean, they swept the grand finals here 3-0 against, like, Vortex and Co, of course, who always do well in this region. So, yeah, pretty dominant stuff for one of the first kind of challengers, kickoff tournaments in the European side, and I'm not expecting this team to lose that many series this year. And actually, Nastie still had the most damage in the entire lobby, despite not having, you know, quite the same KD that Beans had, for example. Just a ridiculous team, the fact that these guys are in challenges, and I'm sure they'll get a spot at some point. And it's also an interesting time to be a player even in challenges, is because there's obviously a lot of talk right now about what happens after the CDL, what happens if the CDL calls it a day to the contract. Is it going to go back to an open circuit? Are we going to go back to 16 teams, for example? I think all of these things are quite plausible in the next 12 to 18 months, which is why some players that, you know, there's maybe some of these guys in challenges that have thought, you know what, maybe I'll just call it a day and, you know, retire from this. Maybe it doesn't make sense at the moment. Just because even if some of these guys aren't signed again this year, there will be good opportunities, I would say, for them to return to the league in the next, you know, 12 to 18 months. But I think some of the, like, surely Nastie will get... I would imagine that somebody will give a Nastie an offer at some point this season. It just makes too much sense when teams would struggle. But then you've got to think about visas, which is not ideal. I will discuss that here with Pred in just a second. Firstly, from Clay. Having played a lot of scrims, Clay and the Ravens over the last couple of days, this is his opinion on the playable hardpoint maps. This is pretty much what we might have expected. I think a lot of us said Invasion will be played. He also says Karachi for hardpoint is playable. Some of the maps such as, you know, Scrapyard, of course, was talked about. That, especially with the movement in this game and no capture the flag, doesn't seem especially viable. So instead, Subbase, Skid Row as well, which of course is in the beta, and then Terminal. That's his opinion on the only 5 viable hardpoint maps. Now, some people are saying a nameless, you know, Subbase not viable for search and destroy attaches he's tweaking, and, you know, derail control maybe. And people are also talking about Afghan as well as a legitimate possibility. So, yeah, we'll see about that one. And he says for search and destroy, High Rise, which of course was played back in the day, Invasion, Karachi, Terminal, and then who knows? So, yeah, maybe Subbase, and, you know, Clay's like, yeah, not Scrapyard. Control, nobody knows. So that's the current perception there. Now, Ghosty has an interesting point of view as well, because Envoy is like, look, Subbase and Rundown, we need these in the tournaments, in the Search and Destroy tournaments. So there's lots of options. The good thing with 16 maps is there's plenty of options. And even you've got Underpass, which is... I don't think Underpass is ever going to work for Hardpoint or Control, really. But for Search and Destroy, there's quirky maps, such as Arklov Peak. Arklov Peak, I would say, I don't want to gas up Arklov Peak and Joe Seacott and Infinity Ward because... you know how it is. But I do like that map. I actually think that was one of the best Search and Destroy maps in that entire game. It was a bit weird, but for Search and Destroy, it actually worked. At the A-bomb site, the B-bomb site, the way it was designed, you know, there was so much dead space that was there for no reason. But for Search, that was fine. And maybe even Underpass, which is, you know, not considered too good for competitive, might actually, might be in there. And Envoy says down for that too. So we'll see what happens to the meta, but yeah, time will only tell. Now, as we still know, Pred was at a Champions League game at the Emirates the other day. He was actually at the Burnley game yesterday as well, because he had that on his story also. So he's still in London. He's still going to Arsenal games. They won both of them. So maybe he's a good omen for them or something, right, if he actually does support Arsenal. But yeah, still there in London. And that was, you know, the understanding that to get his visa sorted to go to the US ASAP, needed to probably get to the US Embassy in London, do the interview, do the appointment. You guys know how this stuff tends to go. Now, he actually joined up to Dashy's stream briefly yesterday and was commenting on this kind of a little bit. And it talks about how his visa appointment went as if he was back on Bacage, back in the Vanguard days, which has been known to be maybe Pred's, you know, best ever map. Every time he would just square up with you always on Bacage. So yeah, I guess what he's saying here is he went in with maximum confidence and presumably thinks that things went all rather well. I mean, there shouldn't really be an issue, right? He's had it last year. It was no problem at all. So getting it renewed, I don't know why they didn't get this renewed. What I don't understand about OpTic, right, is how these visa things continue so often and how Pred has been on OpTic, and he said this himself in like one of the, what was it, the game chat thing they did or whatever the discussion is with all the guys. He said he's basically been on OpTic in spirit since January. Whenever they wanted him, and then they couldn't get the deal done because Surge said no to all the money in the world, he's basically been on OpTic since then. So OpTic have known Pred was joining for 11 months, and yet there's still some sort of visa issue. I just don't really understand how, but yeah, it shouldn't be too much of a concern, should it really? You had it last year with Surge in the last couple of seasons, so I don't imagine getting renewed, given the circumstances, will be a difficulty, but it's just a matter of time. And clearly the appointment has now occurred. And what does this mean in terms of how long it's going to take from now?
It's like, don't worry, bro. Like, we're holding down the fort.
We're holding this shit down, bro. Like, I went in there like it was Burkage. I was getting out of there, like, that house. Like when I went into that appointment, I got in there like it was Burkage.
Like it was back. You were back kitchen. You were in kitchen, bro.
I stood cancelled into that appointment and I said, I'm fucking getting out of here.
So I'm guessing you had the appointment now like mid last week sometime. Maybe it was just on Friday. Maybe it was a couple of days before. I don't know. But whenever it was, how long, I don't know if you guys know in the comments below, like how long this should take, how long this would take. I just Googled it from like the UK, US Embassy, and they say there's like a processing time of basically a week, but this is also working days, you know how that goes, you know, then it goes over to the next weekend. So, you know, possibly at the end of this week, you might expect Pred to be able to get on a flight to the States, which would be, you know, roughly a week after release, which wouldn't be the end of the world. And that was pretty similar to what Dashy said a little while ago, where he said that, yeah, he'd expect 1 to 2 weeks after Dashy said that, oh yeah, Pred's not going to be here yet. He basically said 1 to 2 weeks. And yeah, that would also kind of align with that. 1 week after release, not the end of the world. If it ends up being 2 weeks after release, Pred gets to the US, then, you know, OpTic are going to be a little bit on the back foot because teams aren't all starting to scrim, but some teams are already. And some teams, of course, have already won kickoff tournaments with their full team, which is, you know, a nice little advantage as well. So yeah, the longer this drags on, the more difficult it is. I think that, you know, I really don't want to be in a world where OpTic turn up to the first major or to the first couple of matches and they start to say, oh, well, you know, Pred wasn't here because of the visa thing, so that's why we're not playing so well at this tournament. And, you know, because it's just, we've heard this consistent trend again and again and again. So it's an unfortunate thing for OpTic to deal with, but I'm guessing Pred can get that sorted over the next couple of days. He seems confident enough at the very least that will be the case. Just before we close out, I wanted to mention snaking, because we're back at it again, baby. Now, I know that it shouldn't be a surprise. It's been in the game for so long now, and here comes Cellium again with it. But it's like, can this guy not just stop? You know what I mean? Do we need to be doing this on day 3? I know that you want to be doing this in Champs Grand Finals, and I don't know how many controllers this guy's going through in a week, but Jesus Christ. I mean, this poor guy that he's up against in the 1 versus 1, I think he might have been temp, actually. And, I mean, what can you even say at this point? You've got Cellium and Drazah on the same team. It's like, as I said yesterday, when there's gentlemen's agreements, the pros kind of care about the weapon balancing. They don't care about the viewing experience, really. And, you know, this is evident with stuff like this, where it's just obnoxious to play and to watch. But if it's the most viable way to play the game, then, you know, I guess it's the game that should be fixed, not the players, because somebody's always going to do this. That's the way I look at it, at least, is like, you know, at least nowadays with the players that we currently have, if Cellium was to magically stop, Drazah will still do it, or someone will still do it. So I guess really this is the question to Sledgehammer Games, actually, as Jake Hall even says. Can they think about this? Because we know that Infinity Ward, they don't listen to us. But Sledgehammer, they actually do kind of care. I don't know if it's possible. Like, there should be some sort of cooldown. There's got to be a way to fix snaking. It's been done in other games. It's not viable in CS for reasons that I've talked about in the past. Surely it's something to think about, because this is just, especially day 3, it really ain't the best look. So I know it's probably not top of their priority list, but I would love to see Sledgehammer come out and say, right, yeah, the snaking, we're going to deal with it somewhat, because I can't be bothered to watch this for a year again, but I think we are going to be probably forced to. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.